Okay, so today we're going to still be factoring trinomials, only instead of a equals 1, a is going to be greater than 1. So we're going to follow the same steps at the beginning that we did on the last one. So we're going to go ahead and factor out a GCF if there is one. In this case, I went ahead and showed you one that did have one. So if I had started with this 4y here, if I factored a 2 out of each one of them, then this is what I would have left. So now I'm going to focus really carefully on what's the A and what's the B and what's the C. So A times C is 30, or 2 times 15 if you need to see that. And the B is just 13, so we're going to write it down. So now I'm going to list in the table really quickly all the things that multiply together to give me 30. So like 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, and 5 and 6. It's pretty clear that the 3 and the 10 are going to be the ones that are going to go ahead and give me the 13 that I'm looking for, because clearly the other ones give me other numbers. So I'm interested in this one. Now, unlike the A equal 1 problems, when I have a coefficient that's different than 1, you don't have the normal format of x plus x plus. So what we have to do is we have to figure out how we're going to make. So I'm going to go 10 and plus 3y, and then I'm going to go ahead and put this first part, 2y squared plus, and then I have the plus 15. So just so we're clear, this is this, this is this, and then these two together make the 13. Okay, so now we're going to divide it into two parts, grouping like we done before. So what does the first pair have in common? Well, they have a 2y in common. When I take that left, 2 goes into 10 5 times. What does the 3 and the 15 have in common? Well, they have a 3. And now I'm going to notice that I have my y plus 5. And the part that's left is 2y plus 3. And I still have this original 2 GCF at the beginning. So I am in this format: greatest common factor, first pair, second pair, or factors. We're going to do a bunch of those, and I'm going to show you both ways. This is one method. Method number 2 is really more about kind of guessing and checking, and I'm using the box method to kind of help me do that. So I would have started the same way. I'm still going to get my greatest common factor, and I'm still going to come up with the 3 and the 10. But let me change color here, and I'm going to show you what happens. So in the box method, we know that we had 2y squared and that this was 15, and that these two together have to add up to the 13y. So I'm going to go ahead and put 10y here and 3y here. Remember, that's the part we found from our chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to get the numbers in the box. So 2y times a y is going to give me that. And I know this is what these two have in common. See it? 2y squared and 10y, they have a 2 and a y in common. And then if I go this way, what do they have in common? They have a y in common. So then finding the GCF here, what do they have in common? They have a 5 in common. And then this direction, what do they have in common? They have a 3 in common. So there is where I'm going to get it. So 2y plus 3 and y plus 5. And again, I just stick that greatest common factor we did at the beginning back out. And as you can see, both answers are the same. It really is just a matter of whether you would prefer to group them and pull the common factors out, or whether you want to put them in the box. The problem with that is you have to draw the box each time. So there is advantages and disadvantages to both of them. So let's go ahead and practice a couple more, and so we're at least seeing maybe better what I did. So again, I am looking for the greatest common factor. 3 goes into 6, 21, and 15. And so I've rewritten it here, and I'm going to identify those as A, B, and C. So A is 2, and B is 5, and that multiplies together to give me 10. Now I don't have to do the whole table. I know that that's going to be 2 and 5, and everything's plus, so this adds up to 7, and it multiplies together to give me 10. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. You're going to write down your 2d squared, and now you're going to use your 2 and your 5, so it'll be plus 2d plus 5d and plus 5. Remember, because this and this are the same, this and this are the same, and these came from there. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and put parentheses around them. So what does each pair have in common? Well, it has a 2 and a d in common, which gives me a d left, and that all taken out, so we put a 1 in the whole spot open. What does 5d and 5 have in common? Well, they have a 5 in common, so I have a d plus 1 left. And again, that would now be my thing they have in common. So I have d plus 1, and then the parts that are left are 2d plus 5. And then what did they have for the GCF? It was 3. So we'll stick the 3 out front. And so this is my final answer. So again, let me show you again the box method. I'm going to do just what I did in that green row up there. I'm going to record all the parts. So 2d squared plus 2d plus 5d and plus 5. So again, what does this row have in common? It has a 2d in common. What does this row have in common? A 5. Vertically, what do these two have in common? They have a d in common. What do these two have in common? They have nothing. So we put plus 1. And again, that's where this comes from. See, there's this one, and then this one, and you tidy it up. Let me slide that down a little bit so you can see it. That would then be d plus 1. The side over here becomes 2d plus 5, and we still stick the 3 out front. And so as you can see, both answers are the same. So again, you don't have to do both methods. You're going to have to figure out which way looks a little bit simpler for you. So we're going to do a couple more in the notes in the video so that you can kind of see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and look at this one. Clearly, I can see they're all even, so I'm going to divide each of them through by a 2. And I'm going to stick my 2 as my greatest common factor over here to the side and ignore it. So it's 3x squared minus 5x minus 2. So I'm going to make my chart, or I'm going to come up with what my AC is. So that would be 3 times negative 2, which equals negative 6. And the B that I'm looking for is negative 5. So what multiplies together to give me negative 6? Well, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Now, I have to pay close attention to the signs because there's 2 different ways to make 5. So I want it to multiply together to give me a negative, which means one of them has to be negative, but not both. So now when I add, the only one that makes me 5, or in this case, negative 5, is the top one. 1 and negative 6, because this one is going to make negative 1. So I'm interested in this column right there. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to show both ways if I have room. So I start with my, 3x squared. I'm going to use both of these, so plus 1 and x and minus 6x and minus, up here we have a minus 2. So again, I'm going to see what they have in common. So this first set has an x in common. So I have 3x plus 1 left. What does the next set have in common? They have a negative 2 in common, so that make that 3x plus 1. So my final answer is the 2 from up above, the parenthesis that they have in common, and then the leftovers. And again, I have literally just written that out in step-by-step in instructions for this middle section so that you would know what I'm asking as I go through it. All right, let's try another one. Let's try this one directly below it. 2, 23, and 11. 2 and 11 don't have anything in common, so there's no GCF on this one. So I'm ready to figure out automatically what is going to make, so 2 times 11 is 22. I look at my chart. I want a positive 11. So I know to make 22, I have options of 1 and 22, or I have 2 and 11. Well, 2 and 11 clearly don't make 23. So to make a negative 23, it's going to be negative 1 and a negative 23. So I'm going to write this out. I'm going to copy this part down. I'm going to split this out into a negative 1c and a negative 22c, and I still have my 11. So remember, this is the part we just found over here on the side. So let's change color so you can see it. I'm going to divide it up into 2 groups. What does the first pair have in common? They have a c in common. What does the second group have in common? Well, I don't want it to be a negative here, so I'm going to pull out a negative 11. Negative 22 divided by negative 11 is a positive 2. Negative 11 divided by negative 11 is a minus 1. So my answer here is 2c minus 1 and then c minus 11. All right, so let's do the box method on the one right next to it. So clearly the first thing I need to do is find out that the GVC is 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as n squared minus 10n minus 11. What makes 11? Well, clearly it's 1 times 11. Since it's negative and I want the bigger number to be negative, I know it's negative 11 and a positive 1. So when I split this out, it becomes plus 1n and minus 11n. So in my box, that's what I'm going to put. I'm going to put this one in here. I'm going to put this one in here. I'm going to put this one in here. And I'm going to put this one in here. Let me make it a little bit smaller. Speed this up a little bit. Okay, so let's see what they have in common. This row has an n in common. This row has a negative 11 in common. Up and down, this row has an n in common. And this row has nothing in common, so we put a 1 to hold the spot open. So my answer is n minus 11, n plus 1, and we bring the GCF down and then put a 2 out front. Take a minute and look at it and process. You are going to have to decide which method works better for you and stick with it. If you are really good at factoring with grouping, I would probably go with that one. I'm going to do, I think, 2 more just so you can kind of see it. If you kind of got the gist, you can turn the video off now. If you're still struggling, go ahead and watch the next couple. So again, what do they have in common? They have a 5 in common. When I divide out the 5, I'm left with c squared plus 5c minus 6. I want to break this one down. Things that multiply together to give me 6 would be 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. One of them has to be negative, and I want the bigger number to be positive, so I know that that one's going to be negative. So I believe it's going to be negative 1. C and plus 6c makes this 5c. That's the tricky part right there, knowing what to break it down into. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this and this. And because I've broken it down, I'm going to be too lazy to draw the box method, and I'm going to go ahead and just factor by grouping. So what do these have in common? A c. What does the second set have in common? A 6. And then I write my answer, c minus 1 and c plus 6, and their GCF is a 5. Okay, so GCF on this one is clearly a 2. Half of that is 3, half of that is 1, half of that is 10. So my GCF is 2. – Split this one in I needed to make 10. So I believe 2 and 5 are not going to make 1. 1 and... Oh, wait a minute, not 10. I got in a hurry, didn't I? So I have a 3 and a 10. I want to make negative 30. So then I believe it's going to be 5 and 6. And the 6 can be negative. So 5 G's minus 6 G's makes negative 1. And 5 times 6 would make me the negative 30 that I need. Okay, almost made a mistake there. That happens every time. All right, so again, I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to put in my parentheses so you can see. These have a G in common. I'm left with 3G plus 5. The second set have a negative 2 in common, and that would make positive 3G and positive 5. And so 3G plus 5 and G minus 2. All right, so that's a lot of examples, and now you're going to work on the assignment. We're going to continue working on this next week on the block days as well, but we need to get really good at this.